Welcome everybody to NinjaOne's Scriptapalooza. This is an event that celebrates some of the things that we've put out into NinjaOne very recently, but also talks about how you can utilize the scripts that we've put into the product to get immediate value out today. So before we kick off, just a couple of things. There are a number of Ninja employees in the chat, including some of the developers and managers who have helped put these scripts together. So thank you very much to those. Any questions that you want to put forward, if you add them in the Q&A in the Zoom webinar, then we should be able to see them and we'll answer them as we go through, and we'll touch on some of those at the end. Alternatively, anything that you put in the chat will likely get answered by one of the other Ninja employees who are in them. We may not get around to answering those if we don't have enough time. We also have some prizes, so stay tuned in today's webinar towards the end and find out what they are. And I'm pretty jealous because there's a couple of things in there that I'd quite like to have. So let's kick this off. Firstly, introduce myself. My name is Gavin Stone. I'm a Director of Product Management for NinjaOne, and today I'm joined by the glorious Jeff Hunter, who is I'll let him key himself up.
My name is Jeff, and I am the field CTO here at NinjaOne. Some of you may have been in previous webinars that I've hosted, namely Office Hours, which is something we do for partners every month. Pleasure to be here today.
And it's good to have you, Jeff. Let's talk about something really exciting. Very recently, and this is all in the product now, we've added 66 new scripts to the automation library, which is Ninja's biggest ever install of automations that have been added in one go. And of those, and there's an additional 35 which we've updated to use our dynamic script forms. And if you've not seen what they are, you'll see those as part of what me and Jeff are about to go through some of these examples. So we have a dedicated team in the background who is constantly building these scripts. They're testing them, we're being rigorous with them. And we're putting that value into the product for you. And it's all available today in all regions of Ninja. I'm just going to talk about a high-level agenda so you can have a good idea of what we're going through today. We're going to be talking about a customized display pop-up, so how you can brand notifications and really excitingly use actions with those. Then we're doing an inactive account alert to show you how you can secure and identify on accounts that are inactive in your environments. We're looking at a tree size report, which is supplemental information on disk space usage. We're going to show you how you can install and run BG Info, which gives you visuals, especially great on servers, to show you IP address and computer name and things like that. We're going to talk about creating a new local user and balancing security with business needs, and then go through how you can utilize an automation to change the power and the sleep settings. Okay, so let me stop sharing here and flip across to bear me 1 second while I key this up.
Great to see so many ninjas in the chat. A lot of names I recognize.
Okay, so hopefully everyone has seen my demo account here, and we got a Ninja remote window open. So I'm going to be flicking between these windows as we present this. But first, we're going to talk about the display pop-up. So what is the display pop-up? First of all, for those of you who are new, let me show you where these are and where you can import them from the script library. If we come into administration and then go to library and into automation, you'll see an option up here called the template library. In the template library is where all of the Ninja tested and written scripts are. If we filter down here for the word display, you'll see we've got a display pop-up, which is for Windows, and we also have the same for Mac OS. We're not going to be demoing the Mac OS one today, but the Ninja one for Windows instead. I already have this imported, so I'm not going to go through that process, but it is relatively simple to do. Just click on the script and click import. You can see some of the scripts that I'm going to be touching on here today. So let me jump into my device, my Windows device here, and I'm going to just run the script that I've put in. If we go to the play button and then run automation, and we come into script, I'm going to filter down to the category that I've imported these scripts into, and I'm going to select display pop-up. The first important thing about some of these scripts that we're going to go over today is that some of them need to run as the current logged on user. And this is one of those, because the pop-up that's going to display is going to display on the user screen, as opposed to running in the system context. So you'll see a number of items down here, but before I jump into them, I want to talk about what the benefits are of some of these items that we've put in here, but also this particular script. This is a really good customizable way of getting through to your clients to do things like reboot management, branded service outages, proactive patch day reminders, which I'll come to in a second, or even emergency alerts that you want to send out. You'll see at the bottom here that I was talking about dynamic script forms earlier, and this is an example of that. This is not just something that's in the Ninja templates. This is in your own automations and scripts that you can put into Ninja. You can customize these however you want. So I'm going to go through this, and I'm just going to fill some of this in. So the application ID is the window title. So for mine, I'm going to call it the Gavin Scone Bakery. I'm sure in the chat there's a lot of people disagreeing with how I say scone, and to that I say you're wrong. For the logo path, I am just going to take my text out here and paste this into here. So this is a customizable logo that will appear at the top of that pop-up. I'm going to leave icon path empty, but this is going to default to the Ninja icon if I leave it empty. And for the pop-up message, we're going to say Geraldine requires you to update your line of business application. We're going to set a default button. This is really exciting part of this, and this is pretty complex under the hood. But what this is doing is this is going to render action buttons on the pop-up that allow you to set certain commands that run when the user presses those buttons. So for this right button, we're going to call this update app. And for the right button action, just to illustrate this, I'm going to kill a notepad instance that is running. But feasibly, this could be any command that you can run. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here and I'm just going to run. I'm just going to run notepad and leave it open. I'm going to put a countdown in here, and you'll see what this does once we've executed. I'll choose do nothing as a secondary option on the left-hand button. So I'm running as current logged on user here. I've set everything here, and I'm going to run this and choose yes. So hopefully what we'll see on this side is the pop-up appear. So you can see the customization in the title. You can see the lovely scones available at the Gavin Scone Bakery. But we also have these actions. So now the user can make a choice. They can choose do nothing, which has no action behind it in what we just ran. Or we can choose update app. And clicking on that allows the user to take the action that you specified when running the script. So if I tap that, you'll see that the notepad window closes and that action has now taken place. And another thing you'll notice if you're new to Ninja is the speed that this happens in Ninja. These scripts run really fast in Ninja, and even sometimes they beat me opening up into the remote window when we're demonstrating this. You don't necessarily need to use the actions or the buttons though. If I come back to here again, and we'll just run the same automation again, we can just do a current logged on user. I don't need to change anything here apart from the pop-up message. And we run that again. And you'll see in a second or two, that just pulls up a standard Ninja branded one because no logo has been specified. And then the message that you put there at the bottom. So that's great. And that works for one-off. But how do you do this so that you don't have to fill that in every time, and you can test it so that when you do have an emergency and you need to send something out, it's ready to go? You can do that by importing the script again and saving it under a different name. And if I come into our library here and go into automations, and I come into my ones that I've pre-created earlier. So you can import the same script multiple times and call it different names. And what you're going to see here is an option in the defaults for dynamic script forms. So for example, in this particular one, if I go into the pop-up message, you can see I've set a default value for this. And what this does, when you run the automation, it automatically populates that for you in the dynamic script forms, which you're about to see when I execute that from here. So I'm going to come back to my device again. We are going to choose Run Automation Script. We'll filter down to this one that already has a number of these default values set. You can see that it's pre-filled all of the values that were set, like for example, this pop-up message that I have here. The only thing that you need to remember to do is change to current logged on user. And for those who find that difficult, in the next major release, we actually have built in a default automation run as for automation. So when you're building them, you can actually set in the script itself that it always defaults to the current logged on user, and that will be in the next major release. So once we've done that, I'm going to run that. We'll flip backwards here to the Ninja remote window, and you can see how that triggers the pop-up. Unfortunately, the ovens are down at the bakery, so we need to initiate some emergency scan protocols. That's it for this. The script that we have works on server OSs too, which is great if you need that. And this is really good for things like we utilized something in a prior company because I used to work for an MSP that gave proactive patch day reminders, which is great to say, make sure you leave your machine on at 6 p.m. After 5 p.m. when you go home, just an hour before the end of the day, and they get a nice branded notification. It looks official. It looks proper, and that allows people to remind themselves to do things. So the next one we have lined up for you is with Jeff, and he's going to talk about inactive accounts.
I am, but before we start talking about inactive accounts, we actually wanted to hear from you. We're going to launch a quick poll that is not multiple choice. It is a free write field. And it's essentially, what particular scenario, situation, problem do you have? Would you like to see a script for? So let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And I will go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and see my Ninja remote window here. Let's go ahead and go into my policy. Now we're going to be taking more of a security focused look at a script. Gavin's example is great, but it's about notifying the end user, which is certainly very valuable. But we're going to be taking a different approach that's more a perspective on device hardening. I'm always a big fan of adding as many layers of security as you feasibly can to make your endpoints more difficult to compromise, making them look less appealing. Malicious actors are pouring water on concrete, trying to find every crack and every crevice that they can for compromise, and having as many layers as you can to prevent them from accessing a device is always a good idea. And so what we'll do is leverage the template library script to check for inactive accounts. In my experience, the user themselves is probably one of the more dangerous vectors in endpoint security. And so it's always good to try and have a keen eye on where the user has maybe been a little careless, maybe has not changed their password, or in this case is simply has an account on a device that they're not utilizing. And so we'll go ahead and leverage the inactive account alert script. I have actually already imported this, but I did want to go ahead and bring up the documentation at the very top about how this script is going to work. You can see that when we run it, we're going to get this sort of output right here. And this is going to show us the users in question and when they last logged in. And we'll get a little warning right here if there are inactive accounts detected. Now, what defines an inactive account? The good news is it's up to you. You'll see over here on the right-hand side, we have the script variables with two options. One is the bottom option to include any disabled users, and the other, excuse me, is how many days you want to alert off of if the device has been, or the account, I should say, has been inactive. Now, our default value here is 90 days, which I'm going to leverage, but every environment's different, so you probably want to look at what the expectation would be for a person to be regularly logging into the endpoints that you're managing. Now I can go ahead and import this. I have already done that step, so I have the script available for me. And if I want, I can go to a device, like let's say this device right here, and I could go ahead and run this script on demand. And that would let me know if there's been an inactive account. It's as simple as typing in my inactive account alert right here. This can run as system. It does not need to run as the current logged on user. And I'm just going to leave all my default settings in place here. I am going to go ahead and exclude disabled users, so I'll be leaving that particular checkbox unchecked. And then I can run that script right there. And on the right-hand side, this is going to give me the verbose output of the script, which in this case is going to be anybody who hasn't logged into this machine in 90 days. Now, this is good just informationally to have this accessible on demand ad hoc. We can see right here on the right-hand side, here's everybody on this machine who hasn't logged in recently. Certainly might need to do a little bit of cleanup. Some people have never logged in right here. However, this is an action that I had to navigate to a device and click on it and make it happen. And we would much prefer to automate this from an alerting perspective. And so what we can do here is go into our policy, in this case, the enterprise workstation policy. And here we'll have our conditions. Now, inside of Ninja, the policy is king. It is the engine that makes Ninja go. All your important settings are going to be inside of policies, or at least the vast majority of them. You'll see scheduled automations, Windows patching, so what patches are being installed, what patches are being rejected, and when is all this happening. Integrated antivirus, and of course, third-party software application patching would be a policy setting as well. But at the top, we have conditions, and this is what you want to monitor and alert off of. If we scroll down a little bit, actually, let's set one up from scratch. We will set up a condition here, and we're going to be leveraging a custom option at the bottom here called script result condition. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It is running a script, which could be in Batch, PowerShell, VB script, JavaScript, or Shell script. In this case, this is in PowerShell. And we can run this script on a recurring basis on an interval of our choosing. So in our case here, I'm going to leverage the inactive account alert. I'm going to leave my default settings in place. Now, every 5 minutes is a little excessive, in my opinion. I think every 12 hours is a perfectly normal time to run this script. You're getting the update basically twice a day of if there are any inactive accounts. Really tracking this from minute to minute doesn't seem to make a tremendous amount of sense to me. Now, how do we want to alert off of this script? You have a couple different options. It could be based off of the result code, and it could be based off of the text string output. Now, for this particular script, if you look at the documentation, there are two relevant exit codes. There's an exit code that you want to trigger the alert off of, which is that there's inactive accounts that have been detected. And that exit code is 1. And so if I go down to the dropdown here and say I want to see an exit code that is equal to 1, that would raise an alert. I need to make one more change, however, which is this dropdown right here for with output. By default, because we are having this dropdown set to contains, it is expecting a text string to be included here. So if I look for an exit code of 1 and there is no included text string, it's not going to alert. So I actually need to change this to does not contain right here. And that means I'm solely looking at just the exit code and nothing else in terms of the criteria I want to alert off of. Now there's another exit code here that's relevant, which is that the underlying mechanics of the script were unsuccessful. So it's not that we returned inactive accounts, it's that the script itself is having difficulty operating. In the case of this particular script, it's because it's leveraging net.exe or the get local user commandlet. Now the exit code for a script error is going to be exit code 2. So if the exit code is 2 here, I now have 2 distinct alert notifications that I'm going to get back. One is my normal expected result that an inactive account has been detected. But then also when the underlying mechanics of the script are not functional, I get a separate alert notification. Now this right here, this creates the alert. I am going to name this, if I can type, right there. And I can set a severity and priority here. This is an extremely important setting, the auto reset functionality. How quickly is this going to reset within the Ninja dashboard? Do I want a purely time-based reset, or would I rather have it automatically reset whenever we detect the underlying condition is no longer relevant? In this case, it would mean that there are no inactive accounts on the device. I'm going to go ahead and leverage this option for now. And then down at the very bottom, I'm going to go ahead and create a ticket. And this is going to go directly into Ninja ticketing, although this could also go into an integrated PSA, or we could just send out an email letting you know that this issue has occurred to any email inbox. So we'll go ahead and save that there, or more precisely, I have already saved it and put it in action so that I can show you what the workflow would be like. So if I close out of my policies here, I can go over to my ticketing on the left-hand side and I'll see my all tickets. And right at the very top here, I'm going to see all of the tickets that were created as a result of inactive accounts being found on the devices in this policy. So we'll go to this device right here. So now I can see the alert. I can see everybody who was detected as being inactive right here. And the nice thing about this from a workflow perspective is that I can take one of these users here, let's say Sean Hamilton, and I'll copy his username there. And then from the play button, I have the ability to take an action on a device. Seems like it would be a pretty good idea to go ahead and disable this user. And so from here, I can leverage another script from the template library, which is to disable a user. And so if I type in disable user at the very bottom here, you'll see disable a local user, and I can go ahead and paste in Sean's name there. And so now I can run the script to go ahead and disable him. And that allows me to go ahead, complete all those actions through the ticket. This is something that you could automate, but it seems like this is a pretty good action that I might want to have a human being have actual eyes on. I think this is a great way to demonstrate how you can leverage scripts from the template library to create your own alerts, convert them into conditions, which will create alerts and could potentially create tickets. It can be very easy to set up a lot of security-focused actions within Ninja very quickly. In this particular case, this took me about 5 minutes or so. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Gavin for our next example.
Thanks, Jeff. One point I want to make about the script Jeff was just looking at was that does support Active Directory as well. It's not just local users. I saw a couple of questions come in that were related to that. The script changes how it behaves if it's running on a domain controller. I know a lot of people on the call are not managing local users in that particular way, but in this case, it illustrates. We're illustrating the local user, just the ease of demoing that. Okay, so let me reshare my screen out here again. Okay, so let me set the scene for you. How many of you have had this type of call before where ring, ring, hello? Yes, this is Bob Smith. I need, I'm seeing a pop up on my machine that says my application can't start because the disk is full or something has happened. Everything's broken, nothing's working in Windows. Now we have conditions for disk free space and monitoring in Ninja, but what I'm going to show you here is a script called tree size report. Let me show you where this is. Come into the library automation and go into the template library. Now this time we're going to search for tree size. As per before, I've already put this in. Let me show you what I have set up here to demo this on the actual Ninja, on the actual workstation, I should say. If I come into the C drive, you can see I've got a folder here called demo. In demo, I've got a variety of random files. So for example, you can see one of those in gallery just to illustrate what this script does. And what this script actually does is it allows you to set a path that gets traversed by the script and outputs where the space is being used. So let me show you what that looks like. If I come back across to my machine here, we'll go to the play button, run automation and script, filter down to the category and go into tree size report. For this one, we're running this as system. And for the path, just because I don't want the script to have to go through the entire C drive, I'm just going to filter it down to the demo folder that's there. Now, the folder depth determines how deep and recursive this script goes when it runs. I'm going to leave that as 3, which is the default, but I'm going to take down the minimum folder size to 50 megabytes. So I'm going to run this. This won't have anything actually appear on the machine, but you can see that the automation started almost straight away there. What that script is doing in the background now is it's going into that C demo folder and it's working out what the sizes are of all of the files that are in there. You can see that's completed. If I come to more, you'll see there's a breakdown of where the files are and where the file sizes are. If this went up into gigabytes, in this case it doesn't, the units would change. What this allows you to do by setting that minimum is get the folders, instead of all of the folders that are in Windows, just get the folders that are, say, over 2 gig, because this tends to be that somebody's put like a 50 gig file on the desktop or something like that, and it's filled something up. And utilizing this running through C would just demonstrate anything that goes over that threshold for you. That's great as a one-off run, but it works so much better when you have this as a remediation information script in your condition. I'm just going to put a condition in for this particular endpoint, and I'm going to do this relatively quickly. We're going to choose the disk free space condition. I'm going to choose to trigger this when this is greater than 50% because I want it to trigger immediately. That's okay. And then I'm going to add in the script that we've just been playing with as an automation. So if I come into here and filter into categories, I'm going to run the tree size report, and I'm going to put the same things in here that we had previously. So in demo, and then down to 50 meg, we'll click apply on there. So what this will do now is when this condition triggers, so this in real terms would probably be the disk free space is less than 10%, the Ninja condition triggers, and then the automation runs after the condition has triggered. So if I add this in here and I save this, now this may take a second or two for the condition to evaluate and then evaluate the script. So if I come out of here and we go back to the overview, you can see already actually that the condition triggered and it ran the automation that was there. And from there, you get this output. So what you end up with is your technicians get alerted to a free space, or you get alerted to a free space notification. You can come straight into the device and just see where that free space has gone with zero effort, which is really handy information to have. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to Jeff, who I think is talking about BG Info.
I am talking about BG Info. Let me share my screen again. We will once again journey back to the template library. Now, again, I've already imported this script into our environment, but this is downloading and installing BG Info. For those of you who aren't aware, BG Info is an application that takes a lot of the pertinent details about a device and makes it visible on the desktop. Now, I have personally struggled with this many, many times, which is identifying the device that somebody is on. You want to try and make it as easy as possible for the end user when you're having that kind of back and forth communication. I personally had to drive 3 hours one way because somebody was swearing up and down that they were on machine number 2, had a big old sticker on the side of it. Somebody had put something next to the machine that covered up the 1. It was actually machine number 12. So that was a 3-hour drive to find that out. So you want to make it as easy as possible, as clear as possible to help your end user identify the device in a help desk type scenario. And so this is very good because it makes it very obvious what the details of the machine are. And so it's nice and easy for them to just read that off over the phone, take a screenshot, whatever the venue is that you're accepting this end user request through. Now, this is not something that we want to have run in the moment, I don't think. This isn't something that we'd want to run ad hoc device by device. I think it makes a lot of sense to have this be a device configuration action. This should be something that runs automatically on all devices that you want to have BG Info installed on. I'm going to go ahead and look at this from the perspective of servers. I want to go ahead and have all my servers have BG Info installed so that it's very clear what server you're remoted into. And then if somebody needs to communicate for assistance, they can tell you what the server is. If we go down here, I'm going to go into my coordinating server policy, and then I'm going to add a scheduled automation. I saw one question in the chat that was talking about running a script only as new devices are joined into Ninja. Currently, they were running a script on a recurring basis every single week. And so in this particular scenario, I would recommend the run once immediately option. This is a very powerful scheduling option. It runs once on all devices that are inside of Ninja now and connected and online. If there are any devices that are offline, it'll wait for them to come back online and then run the script. And then finally, any new devices to join to the policy will also have the script run on them. So it's ideal for device configuration actions. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and name this right here, device configuration. I generally would recommend that you only want to have one script block, which is what we're seeing right here, leveraging run once immediately, because run once immediately means it. It is going to run once immediately. And if you have several different script blocks, they're all going to run at the same time. And that may not be ideal and could cause problems. And so what I'd prefer to do is actually build a kind of one single holistic automation here that is able to contain my BG info script and then any other device configurations I'd want to put in place. There are many options inside of the template library that would be good ideas to run here, or good options. I would say joining to a domain would be one. Installing Office 365 might be another. There are many options in there that will really assist and standardize and make sure that all your devices have the same tool sets. Now, in this case, I am just going to run this as system, and I'm not going to specify a config file, which would allow you to determine exactly what is going to be visible and displayed through BG info. Go ahead and hit apply there. Now I could add in more options here. Like I said, I could add in a script perhaps to set the wallpaper here. I might want to change the power settings, which I'll say is a tease for maybe 10 minutes from now. And then we can go ahead and make sure our devices are all properly configured. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add this in here and then hit save. I do have to authenticate. This is something that we will see throughout Ninja, authentication or MFA, not just at login, but periodically while you're in the session, whenever you take high-risk changes, like modifying a policy to have a script push out to all devices on that policy. We'll close out here. And we're going to go into our main dashboard here. We'll drill down into this organization here, and then we'll go into my file server. We're going to see over on the right-hand side that this is going to kick off. It's going to run that action. You can see if I open up my screen here, you can see that I'm currently remoted into this device, and this device has the generic wallpaper. There is nothing particular special about this. So what I'm going to do to actually make sure that we see this change take effect is log out. And then when I log back in after the script has completed, we'll know that the change has been made and that I did just do this by manually installing. While we wait for that to happen, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the other scripts in the template library that would be useful for device configuration actions. So if we come in here, I mentioned joining a computer to a domain right at the very top, I think, very useful. We go down a little bit further, we might want to add a network printer there. I will also do a quick plug for the blocking Windows 10 script. I have to say, I think that's probably one of the most popular scripts or most utilized scripts in my time in the template library. Changing power settings, which we'll get to in just a moment. So plenty of good options there. But if we look back on our screen here, and I change my settings to actually show my remote wallpaper, we should see here that our BG info is going to be displayed here. It will take a second to pop in here since we are just initially signing in, but we will see BG info pop in like we can right there. And so now when somebody calls up, I have a myriad of ways that I can help identify what the machine is. I have the name of the device itself, which makes it very searchable. I have the IP address. And if nothing else, I think that this is a nice secondary check whenever you dial into a server to take an action and go, wait, this isn't the right one. I have definitely made that mistake before. So having this information easily visible and present helps not just the end users, it also helps your technicians. And with that, I will turn it back over to Gavin.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Let's share this back out again. For those of you who know me by now, I like to throw scenarios in first. So we're going to get the old 90s style phone out and pretend we're taking another phone call. And this time it's worse than the last one, because this is the type of call that you don't want to receive when you're a technician. It's Bob. Bob is a contractor for a line of business application, and he's trying to install something on one of the servers that you're managing, and he wants the admin password. So immediately that's throwing alarm bells, and well, I'm not giving Bob the password because he's going to brick that server. One of the scripts that we're going to talk about now is just talking about creating a new local user. Ideally, you don't want to be creating local users when you're in managed environments, but there's certainly requirements to do that for certain types of environments. If I come into the administration here and we go into library and automation again, you'll see that this is called create new local user. So we already have this imported. So I'm not going to import it again. But what I'm going to do differently this time is I'm going to create a custom field first. Once we run this script, and as you see as we run it, it's going to generate a secure password as part of that script, and it's going to write it to a custom field. But to do that, we need to create the custom field. If I come into devices and I come into global custom fields, we're going to click the add field button up here. We're going to call this temporary. Let's get my spelling right there. Temporary password. And we're going to select the field type of text. Once I create this, it's going to ask me for some more options. Because we are going to be writing this in the automation, I'm going to just set the automation scope to read or write. We're not touching the API. I'm going to set the definition scope to device. There's a lot of people on this webinar. One of the things, if you don't know about it, is Ninja's definition scope can now be scoped custom fields to a device, a location, or an organization, which can really help drive scripts to do custom automation based on just setting a custom field at the organization level. If that's something that interests you, definitely look into that. We have the label here. We will save that, make sure I've done everything correctly there. Now let's go and run that script. We're going to go back to our favorite Windows 11 endpoint here, to the play button to run automation and script, and we will filter down to the category and pull up the create new local user script. You can see there's a number of values to fill in here. Anything that has a star on it means that it's mandatory. Anything that has an I next to it means you can hover over and get additional details about what's expected in that particular field. So in this case, we are going to create a contractor called contractor.Geraldine. I've been picking on Geraldine today with names. And we're going to call that user Geraldine contractor. We default to the local user password here as a custom field to save this to, which doesn't exist by default, but I'm going to change this so that it puts the value of the password that gets generated into that custom field. We're going to leave the password length at 20. Now, this is where this script starts to come into its own. Generating a local user on its own is relatively simple from a scripting perspective. But what this does, this allows you to set a date and time to automatically enable this user and set a disable, which is automatic after a certain number of days. So we're on the 5th of March today. Let's say that this contract is not going to start work until 8th of March. For the Americans who are watching or anyone in a different time zone, I apologize for my UK related date formats. And just to make this harder, we're going to do this at 4 AM on the 8th of March. And we're going to choose to disable that after 5 days. We're going to add this user to the local admin group. And for now, we're not going to do anything. The password never expires. So we have the username to add here. Everything looks okay here. We're running a system. Let's run that. That script's going to go away now, and it's going to do a number of things in the background. We'll just give this a second to finish, and then we'll jump across to the machine and have a look at what's actually happened. Okay, so that's completed. I'm going to come into computer management here and just have a look at what users have been generated. And you can actually see that the contractor.geraldine has actually been created. We automatically fill in the description of when that was created and fill that in there. You can see that this is disabled by default. If we didn't fill that in, it would have been enabled by default. But because we set this to enable in 5 days, that's now ticked. And the way that we do that under the hood is the script has actually generated a scheduled task, which will run in 5 days, or whatever you set in that script, because that's dynamic. So you can see there that runs at 4 o'clock on the 8th of March. If I run this now, what you should see in the computer management screen is that Geraldine's now disabled. So that talks about how we can be dynamic with the amount of days and time even before we want to enable somebody. If we come into just here for a second, you may be questioning, well, then how does the account disable? We actually tag the account when we create it to have an account expiry on it. This is, let me just change this here. And you'll see as I run this, if I can find the account that we just generated, there it is. You'll see that the account's tagged to expire on the 13th of March. So it's taken those dates that you've put in there dynamically, and it's calculated the range and will enable and disable them for you on that particular date. And I think that's very handy if you ever do need to create local users, that you have some level of security to make sure that they are being enabled only at the time that you need them and then disabled and removed afterwards. And with that, I'll pass you back to Jeff.
Thank you, Gavin. Let me share my screen for the final time. And we're going to be speaking about changing the power settings of a device. I'm going to go ahead and show you the change power and sleep settings script right here. This is from the template library. This is a very complex script. You can see that there's a lot of things in motion here. And again, one of the things we love about the script variables is it takes this kind of complexity and it makes it very simple to use. You can see on the right-hand side here, all the script variables, I think probably more than we've seen for any other single script so far today, that allows us to impact this script and change what its behavior is going to do. Now, before we go into actually using the script, I want to show you what the bad old days looked like. So changing power settings, this is something that's been a hot topic for years here. And this is something that we leveraged previously. This is by Patrick Berger, whose website I think is shut down now, PowerShell. But this was a script that he had to change the power settings on a device, very similar to what we have in the template library. But note here, this is pre-script variables. And so anytime I wanted to make a change here, I have to come in and modify the settings in here in order to make the script work properly. It makes it much more contingent on one person to administer all of these scripts rather than the script variables approach, which makes it a lot easier for really anybody who has access to the script to utilize it without needing to know or have a deep knowledge of PowerShell scripting. Now that we have kind of shown what the bad old days look like, let's say in the present and see how we can push this script out. This would make a ton of sense as a device configuration action inside of policies, but I also wanted to show a different method to make these changes, which would be leveraging the devices menu. Now, first and foremost, we can make changes here on an ad hoc basis. And this is very useful because most of the times that people are looking to change power settings, it's because they're having difficulty actually connecting to the device. Maybe it goes to sleep very quickly after being turned on, and so they're not able to actually get into the device and manage it at any point in time. And so what we can do here is actually run this script manually across all these devices. If I run across everybody, of course, anybody who's online, they're going to have this change made on them immediately. But when I run in this manner, anyone who is not currently online has the script queued up to run on them. So it's ideal for that scenario where you're not sure when the device is going to be online. You don't want to create a script in policies strictly to have this setting pushed out. You just want to do it in one fell swoop right here. And so I can go ahead and find my change power settings script, make my changes right here of what I would like these settings to be. Now, in this particular case, do I want to change this for both the battery power if it's a laptop or when it's plugged in? In this case, I'm going to make changes only if the device is currently plugged in. What do I want to set my screen out timeout to? In this case, I might want to set it to about 15 minutes. What do I want the hibernate timeout to be? Actually, I don't want it to hibernate at all. And you'll see here that if I put a 0 in the hibernation timeout, that is the same as saying it is never going to go into a hibernation mode. Now at this point, I can go ahead and run this script. And it would make these changes locally on all my devices. And again, for any device that is not currently online, once that device comes back online, the script will run and it will be ready to go. Now, this is good in the moment, but again, we want to set up an automation. We want to have this recur over time so that nobody falls through the cracks. And so what I might do in this scenario is use the limiters at the top to define where I want to enforce certain power settings. Now, I could do this across just laptops potentially if I wanted to change just battery power. In this case, I'm going to do just my Windows workstations. I could also limit down to certain organizations so that some organizations are impacted and others are not. And I could also do this based off of the status of the device or really any other criteria that I would like to monitor. At that point, I can save this as a device group, and this is useful informationally because I can load this up and I'm able to see all these machines, but it's also useful for creating set and forget automations. So if I go to administration and then down into tasks, I can create a new task here, which I might name change power settings because I have no imagination. And we can have this run daily, weekly, or monthly. In my case, I think weekly is kind of a good sweet spot there. Let's go ahead and do Fridays at 9 o'clock. That seems like a pretty safe time that devices are going to be online and ready to receive this settings change. And of course, I have to actually include the script itself. And so we will go ahead and input our settings here for both. Actually, we'll do just plugged in again. And we'll again use these settings here. Again, putting a 0 in there to disable any sleep timeout, disable any disk timeout. And then I can go ahead and apply that. Now, who do I want to target with this? I could target a static selection here, like every company, or I could select something static again, like a device, one or all devices, or anything in between. I'd prefer to make this a dynamic option, which would be Ninja doing the heavy lifting of determining who's supposed to run this script. And again, that could be based off of the filters we saw in device search. Perhaps only certain clients, certain organizations, perhaps only certain types of devices, perhaps devices that are only on a certain domain. You really have a lot of flexibility with determining who gets targeted using the device search groups. And with that, I will turn it back over to Gavin, who I think has some closing thoughts for us.
I absolutely do. I've picked up on a couple of questions that are better demonstrated, so I'm just going to come back across to here. I saw a couple of questions regarding where can I see what scripts were included in the library update that recently went out. If you're anywhere in the app and you go to the help button up here and go into Dojo community, you'll be taken into the first page here, which quite handily has this as a promoted article. So this is at the top. If you come into here, you can see that there's quite a long list, including descriptions about what all of these scripts are doing and the ones that were updated to add those dynamic script forms. One of the questions that came in right at the outset was specifically, can we elaborate more on preset parameters, their naming and default values? I'll touch on that just briefly, but if we come into, let's see here, we'll close that. I'll just refresh this. Okay, for some reason that's not working. I must have, yeah, something popping up there. Okay, maybe we won't start with that question. Jeff, have you got any questions that you'd like to answer as part of the Q&A?
No, I've been kind of answering as we go, so nothing is immediately springing to mind. Although I will once again say this is being recorded. The recording will be disseminated, emailed out, and posted in multiple spots, including the NinjaOne Discord, if anybody would like to join that as well, and the Ninja Dojo as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna flick through these and see if there's any that we can quickly answer. So someone asked, how do we get a script into a custom field? So I'm assuming that means how do you get the output of the script into, or the output of a variable into a custom field? While you were in the Ninja script editor, there's a few ways to do this. There's a commandlet called ninja-property-set, which you can utilize, or if you want to automatically fill in the variable names that you have available as custom fields, if you hit Control and space, I think it is, that will give you a list that can, when you click on there, just pre-fills them in. It's important to note that with the dynamic script forms as well, this is now a separate question on those parameters, that the dynamic script forms are different to the preset parameters. They operate independently. Our parameters still work in the same way that they used to, but the dynamic script forms have been built to make it easier to consume for you. And those default values sit inside the script itself. So once they're set at the script level, they're there permanently. And when you run that script, they are available to you in the forms that they populate. The naming of them is completely up to you. There's a display name for each, and then there's a calculated name for each, which is what you use in the actual script itself. And again, if you hit Control and space and select it, it will fill in a nice little snippet for you, depending on the type of code that you're writing, that will automatically get that variable and allow you to set it in a variable if you're scripting. Someone asked, does it report on file sizes as well as just directory size? I can't remember if it reports on files that are over the threshold, but we can certainly get an answer for that. Any plans for Azure AD join or Intune join? We have nothing planned at the moment in terms of scripts. I'd love to hear what you'd like to see there, specifically what you'd like the script to do. Do we have a script to uninstall Microsoft bloatware? I don't think we do, Jeff. Are you aware of one?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, again, if you want to talk about or send us what you would classify as stuff that you'd like to remove off the bat, that's certainly something that we can look for.
I have one here, Gav, that I think would be an interesting one, which is that I know that there's a few popular scripts in the dojo that revolve around kind of a lap style password rotation. I was curious, I see a few questions here for kind of a built-in functionality for that.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we have looked at, but it's not on the list as it stands at the moment. There are things like laps that do a good job of rotating those passwords, and it's when we're looking at what scripts that we build, risk plays a part of that, as in what's the risk if this goes wrong, what's the risk if it's not used correctly, and what's the wider impact of that. And that's one of those scripts where we have to carefully balance the risk with the with the rewards. So there's more consideration put into building those types of scripts. But if there's enough demand for that, I think that's certainly something that we can to look at. Yeah. I'm just flicking through some of these Q&As. We have 4 minutes left. Let me come back into here. And we'll just flip back to this view for a second. Okay, so although I think I'm showing the presenter view there as opposed to anything else. I pasted the announcement link. I'm sure somebody probably did that into the chat that gives the list, and you've seen how to get through to that from the actual app. Do you want to jump in, Andrew, and talk about some of the prizes on the giveaway?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew. I'm the Marketing Programs Coordinator at Ninja, and I'll be announcing the winner of today's webinar prize. This person will be able to choose between a Sonos Era speaker, an Uni oven, pizza oven, and a Yeti cooler. And with that, the winner of today's prize is, drum roll, please, Brett Vaughn. Everyone drop a huge congratulations in the chat. Brett, please keep an eye out in the following days for an email to claim your prize. Back to you, Jeff.
I am personally vouching for the Uni pizza oven, which makes both delicious pizzas and also makes delicious fish.
I never would have considered doing fish in a pizza oven, Jeff. Consider me illuminated.
I cook more fish in my Uni than I do pizza. That's kind of,
Wow.
I don't like to admit that publicly on a webinar, but it's true.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, and congratulations on winning a pizza oven as well. And I wish I had a pizza oven. I don't have space for one anyway. Okay. I think that ties up, and we are more or less running out of time. Jeff, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover before we finish for today?
No, I think my overriding point here would be that I think we've scratched the surface. You saw what we were able to do with about 6 scripts in an hour. I think that there is a much more that you can do just to get quickly set up and really improve your overall security posture and device configuration posture.
Absolutely. And the one thing I want to pull off the back of this is I know there's a lot of things around AI generating scripts nowadays, but we have a dedicated set of testers and developers who put a lot of effort into generating the complexity that some of these scripts have to give that value back to you. So we're constantly looking for ideas on scripts that you would like to add in. We're going to take the contents of the poll and the submissions that you've put into there, and we're going to rake through it, and the ones that have the most requests, we're going to build for you and put in the product. And we'll continue submitting all of these improvements and additions to the product on as frequent a basis as we can. So thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. Thank you for coming to Scriptapalooza. I hope this was informative for you. Thank you for all your suggestions and your questions. If you had questions that we didn't get to, we will reach out to you after this webinar. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.